a big and cordial and heartfelt invitation to all the women out there, because this is such an exciting field to work in, and it's a beautiful combination of communication and technology. And the world needs people like us, needs women, needs minority genders, needs people of color, to make sure that we get the diversity we need to make this technology as inclusive as possible.
Hello and welcome to a whole new episode of Engati CX. I'm your host Akanksha and we are glad to have all of you join us today. On this show, we talk to CX and technology experts from around the world. We explore, uncover, and share fresh insights on creating experiences that your customers will remember and look forward to. Engati is the world's leading multilingual no-code digital CX platform available across 14 channels with 45,000 solutions created across 186 countries in every domain and use case. Engati has also been recognized as a top platform by Inc. magazine, Tech World, CIO magazine, and many others. We run the Engati blog, video channel, and the Engati CX podcast, receiving upwards of 400,000 visitors annually. And now for our guest. Maaike Groenewege is a conversational consultant, conversational linguistic, content architect, and founder of Women in Voice NL at Conversational. She focuses on all aspects of sustainable chatbot and voice assistant implementation, from project management and platform selection to content strategy and conversational design. Having worked as a technical writer in aviation for 14 years, she believes that creating a chatbot, knowledge base, or any other information product is not the hardest part. The real challenge is in creating great content experiences through continuous maintenance, improvement, and innovation, and building organizations that make this possible. Welcome to the show, Mike. We are so excited to talk to you today.
Thank you so much, Akanksha. I hope I get your name right. It's such a
Yeah.
pleasure to be here. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to sharing some insights with you.
But before we dive into our interview with Mike, don't forget to subscribe to Engati and tap the bell icon to get access to exclusive content from thought leaders from around the globe. So, Mike, I will move ahead with the questions that we have for you. How do we design an effective conversational interface without it sounding so robotic?
Oh, I love this question because, of course, that's one of the biggest complaints that people have about chatbots. Like, oh, it feels so, repetitive, especially when it doesn't understand what you mean. It will usually say something like, oh, I'm sorry, you don't understand. Can you please repeat your question? And you end up in this loop. And, it's not easy to build a good chatbot. And one of the tips or advices that I always give to my clients and my coaches is treat your chatbot as speech, like, a person that you talk to. And if you create a content flow for your chatbot, always make sure that you read it out loud, either to your colleagues or to your test audience, or even to yourself. Because if you speak your content, your dialogue, you'll notice that the structure of a spoken dialogue is different than a written text. When we write text, we usually use paragraphs, which are really big and chunky. And if you speak, then your unit is a turn. And a turn is usually just one breath because, after a while, you need to breathe. So your turns will be much shorter. So treat it as speech and talk. Read it out aloud. And also, when we talk to each other, I don't usually say things like, oh, the interviewer will be, there won't be a lot of passive voice. When I talk to you, and you talk to me. So there's usually a lot of active language usage in a bot. So make your language active, short sentences, put in some variation, make it a bit colloquial. And use stuff like discourse markers, which are the little things like, or right, or like. So that's basically, keep your ears open, listen to how people talk, and try to take that into your bot.
Okay, that was an amazing answer. I'm sure that will help Engati as well in adding more less robotic effect to the chatbots. Yeah.
I guess that your clients have a lot of the same experiences, like how do I tackle this, right? How do I
Yeah.
make it right? Yeah.
Yeah. How in a conversation can we explore the different levels of complexity to create successful intelligent chatbots and conversational AI?
Oh, that's an interesting one. Well, all the questions are so interesting. I could actually talk forever about this because there's different levels of complexity in a chatbot, right? You need to make sure that when people ask something to your bot, the question is recognized and routed to the right answer. So there's a lot of NLP going on there, but I think we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But also, when you work in a complex domain like banking or, in my case, aviation, it's actually not that easy to give short answers because the answer might be more complex and might be, dependent on a lot of kind of variables. And oh, well, it depends. Are you like a commercial client or are you like a private client? So for this, what I really focus on when I develop a chatbot is a good content architecture so that you as a chatbot developer and designer know what the world of your customer looks like. So that starts with actually knowing your audience. So who are you writing for and what is the information need that they have? Are they beginners? Are they more experienced people? Is it a mixture? And how do we cater for that? And another thing is that people usually use a chatbot to solve a problem or to ask for help. So they tend to be in a very kind of active mood. They want action. They don't want long explanations of concepts and definition. They usually want to know, how do I do this? So the how is very important. And the good thing is that there's a professional group, like a group of professionals that have been doing this for a long time already. People like technical writers and instruction designers, they have done a lot of research on how to write an instruction, on how to write a procedure, and on how to actually chunk your information into smaller parts that you can combine to make sure that you can guide your customer through the flow in the most optimal way. So, and I mean, there's a lot of things that I can tell about that. So I'll leave it up to you a bit to see if there's anything more you'd like to explore or.
Yeah. So basically, the complexity that we are talking about here, it can be at various levels. So basically, the organizations that we have for the chatbots focus more on the happy flow side, and they can't predict all the questions that is going to come from the end user side. So that is
True.
basically the most difficult part, I
Yeah,
think.
absolutely. And that's where, of course, data-driven design comes in. I mean, and that is a big shift for people who come from website writing, because, when you create your FAQs, you aim to be complete. And you can kind of rely on, okay, if people are on the website, the chance that they're actually going to find the FAQ is quite big. In a
Yeah.
chatbot, if people don't ask the question, you shouldn't bother by putting the answer in, right? Because people are not going to ask it. So the content is just sitting there. So my advice there would be do a lot of analysis, watch your dashboarding in the chatbot platform. And well, I'm not paid for this, but I use Engati quite a lot to train my own coaches. So the dashboarding is definitely something that we always put a lot of attention to because that's where you actually find the actual questions that your audience is asking. And if you see trends there, for instance, with COVID, like over here, we have some new measures by the government. So you can be sure that people are going to ask about that. And if you watch that on your dashboard and you know, that's a valuable question to answer. So rather than focusing on being complete, focus on the questions that need to be answered. That's one part of the complexity. And oh gosh, it is a complex
Yeah.
situation, definitely.
Just to
Because
reduce this overhead of going through the question and answer variations and going through what will be the question asked and how, and I'll have to add variations for all the questions which is related to my bot. We have added one more feature to reduce the complexity part for our customers, which is basically the documentation. So there, a person can go and upload the document, and then coming up with the answer for that question is something that Engati is handling. So yeah.
yeah, that's wonderful. That's also what I like about being able to link a question to either a flow or an FAQ. That's really interesting, a really interesting approach, also from the maintenance point of view, because I think that's another challenge. I mean, probably the easiest thing about a chatbot is building version 1, and then all your content starts to change. And how do you manage that? I mean, if you've got a relatively small chatbot, it's manageable. But if you work on an enterprise level with lots of different stakeholders and lots of different information owners who all have their own view and their own change cycle for the content, that can also be a challenge. And of course, it's the primary goal of a chatbot should be to give content that's correct at the time of, consultation. So support is needed there.
Yeah. So my next question for you will be, what are the major challenges in natural language processing? So over the years, how we have tackled these issues, and what direction do you see NLP heading towards?
Oh, well, you living in India, you probably have the same challenge with so many languages and local dialects.
Yeah.
In a way, in Europe, the situation is quite similar, because even though we're different languages, for me, I live in the Netherlands, so I only have to drive an hour and a half, and I'm in a different country with a different language. And what I see now is that NLP in the research community has made major advancements, but commercially, the focus is very much on the major languages. To give an example, for instance, in voice, Alexa is not even available in my country and in my language. So I see a big challenge on how are we going to keep the playing field level? How are we going to make sure that we don't exclude people from this technology because they either don't speak the language or because they don't belong to the majority on which the NLP was trained? Because as you also know, is that the majority of machine learning training for NLP is done on white males. So if you're a woman, or if you're a minority gender, or if you have, you have different race, or if you're basically not a man, chances are that NLP might not work as well. So that's a challenge that we need to tackle to make this technology inclusive. Having said that, there's of course, this is an exciting time to be a linguist, which I am. There's basically a new invention, a new improvement like every week. GPT-3, the natural language generation, is going to be interesting and see what that will bring us. So yeah, it's exciting times, but multilingual bots, there's not many platforms that can pull that off successfully so far.
Yeah, it's difficult and very challenging, basically.
Yes.
So currently we see the incorporation of voice assistant in our daily life. So do you see this extending towards commercial use?
That's another interesting question, because it depends on where in the world you are. As I just said, we don't have Alexa. Google Assistant is still in its infancy over here. We do see some companies kind of picking up the voice challenge and exploring the possibilities. And I think it's important to make a distinction between either, on the one hand, you've got smart speakers, and on the other hand, you have voice as an interface, or rather a modality which you can add to your app or to your website, to your tablet, or even to real objects in the physical world. And I definitely do see a use case for that. So more on the utility side, like, supporting things that we do in real life by, making it easy to use your voice rather than your hands. Medical industry, I see a big field of possibilities there, because aviation even, checklist, call and response, stuff like that. Commercially, I'm very interested in what is happening in, voice advertising. But I also see some challenges, because I do have an Alexa speaker here, and I build a skill, and I can't even find my own skill anymore. So the discoverability of voice skills and voice actions is something that the voice world is actually looking very hard to. How do we tackle that? Because you can build the most beautiful skill, if you can't find it, it's going to be a bit of a challenge. But yeah, it's going to be exciting there too to see what's going to happen, because development is crazy right now. It's again so much happening, and I'm trying to keep up. It's not that easy.
Yeah, so do you think it's providing a wealth of opportunity to engage people?
Oh, absolutely. Because, of course, talking is what we love doing, right? It's what we were born to do. I mean, I still think it's a miracle that by the age of 6, we all speak our language and so fluently, and not much is happening to make that possible. So, talking is something that is easy and kind of, accessible. Um, so it's definitely interesting to explore, okay, how can we use this channel, this modality to increase engagement? We need to take some steps though to get there. For instance, if I talk to a smart speaker now, it usually takes some time for it to recognize me. And then the conversation is still kind of, it's not very fluent yet. But I think we'll get there, and then things will really start rolling.
Okay. So, any significant processes of artificial intelligence that basically help in conversational marketing? Basics related to that?
Well, I'm afraid I'm more of a service content person, so I think I'm not really the person to ask that. But from a service content point of view, I see a lot of potential in combining AI, so conversational interfaces, with large data sets and semantic networks like ontologies and databases, so that we can combine the ease of disclosing information, making it available through a conversational interface, with a very kind of manageable backend where we keep lots of information that needs to be up to date, needs to be structured, and that way somehow kind of combine the best of both worlds. And yeah, I'm sure there might be wonderful applications for that in marketing as well, but I'm not really an expert on that.
Yeah. Any other sound bites you'd like to leave our audience and basically our chatbot designers with?
The one thing that I always close my interviews with is a big and cordial and heartfelt invitation to all the women out there, because this is such an exciting field to work in, and it's a beautiful combination of communication and technology, and the world needs people like us, needs women, needs minority genders, needs people of color, to make sure that we get the diversity we need to make this technology as inclusive as possible. So that's always something I want to broadcast as loud as possible. And if you need any help with that, if you want to discuss how do I break into this field as a woman, just shoot me a message and I'll be happy to help out.
Oh, yeah. I'm so glad to hear that. So thank you so much, Mike, for giving us your time. And your insights were really valuable. And I know our audience is going to enjoy this interview.
It was my pleasure.
We'll be back with a new episode and with a new expert soon. So stay tuned. And yeah, we'll see you around for the next one, guys. Thank you.